Everyone was at my brother's startup party except me. My MOM said, "You've always been the quiet one. We didn't want you making things awkward." I just replied, "Then you won't mind missing my wedding too." 3 weeks later, my cousin sent a photo of the invite they never received, and my MOM called me crying. My name is Damien. I'm 28 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon, where I work as a museum exhibit designer. If you've been to the Natural History Museum downtown and seen the dinosaur installation, yeah, that was mine. But I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't heard of me. That's kind of been the theme of my life. I grew up in a family where attention worked like a spotlight, and it never pointed my way. That beam belonged to my younger brother. Max was chaos and charisma rolled into one. He was the kind of kid who jumped off the roof with a homemade parachute, crashed Dad's car into the mailbox at 15, and still got dessert afterward because he's just spirited. That's what Dad said as he patted Max's back and chuckled like it was all part of some boyhood rite of passage. Me? I was the good kid, the quiet one. I followed rules, got straight A's, applied to colleges without being reminded, and kept my head down. When I won a regional design award senior year, Mom's response was, "Of course you did, honey. You always do well." Then she moved on to ask Max how his track tryouts went, even though he'd quit the team 2 weeks before. That was the rhythm of our family. Max made noise and got praise. I made progress and got polite acknowledgement. One memory stands out. I was 19. Max had just turned 17 and borrowed Dad's car without permission. He rear-ended a delivery truck 3 blocks from our house. The car was nearly totaled. When we got the call from the police, I was the one who drove Dad over to the scene. I thought Max was going to get obliterated. Instead, Dad shook his head and muttered, "He's just got too much energy." Always pushing boundaries. That same year, I got offered a summer internship with the Smithsonian. I told Mom and Dad over dinner, practically glowing. Mom smiled, said, "That's great, sweetie," and passed the peace. Max said, "But you'll be fetching coffee," and everyone laughed. The pattern never changed. No matter how loud or impressive my work was, Max's presence always drowned it out. And then came last New Year's Eve. We were all gathered at my parents' house, champagne, catered food, fancy glassware. The whole extended family was there. When things settled, I stood and tapped my glass. "I have some news," I said. "The museum chose me to lead the Pacific Northwest renovation. It's the biggest project they've done in over a decade." A few people clapped politely. My aunt said, "That sounds important." Then Max stood. I wasn't going to say anything yet, but my startup just got an acquisition offer from a Silicon Valley firm. We're talking big numbers. The room erupted. Gasps. Cheers. Someone popped another bottle of champagne. Mom actually cried. Dad hugged him. People asked about stock options, valuations, future plans. By dessert, no one remembered I had spoken. I sat there quietly while everyone toasted to Max's future. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and smiled and swallowed it down like I always did. But inside, I was already packing up years of quiet resentment. Because this time, it didn't just sting. It burned. A month after that New Year's dinner, I found out Max's acquisition party had already happened, through Instagram. It was early on a Saturday. Lynette, my girlfriend, had just gone out to pick up coffee, and I was lying in bed scrolling aimlessly when I saw it. A photo of Max standing beneath a giant gold "Congrats" banner in my parents' backyard. He had a champagne glass in one hand, and that familiar cocky grin on his face. My cousin Angie was tagged in the photo. Then I saw more group shots with a huge catered spread, some tech bros I vaguely recognized, my aunts, uncles, even my grandparents. All of them beaming like they were at the damn Oscars. And I wasn't in a single one. Not only was I not in them, I hadn't even known the party was happening. I sat up slowly, feeling like someone had yanked the air out of the room. I scrolled faster, trying to convince myself it was some small get-together that hadn't needed invites. But the photos said otherwise. String lights. A rented stage. A slide deck presentation on a projector screen. There was even a Max Tech branded ice sculpture. It was a full-blown event. At my parents' house. And no one had told me. I stared at a photo of Max clinking glasses with our parents, his arm slung around Dad's shoulder, Mom beaming like she'd just watched him win a Nobel Prize. They looked like the happiest family in the world. Without me. Lynette came in a few minutes later, holding 2 lattes. I guess I looked pale because she stopped in the doorway and asked, "Are you okay?" I turned the phone screen toward her. She studied it for a second, then looked up. "Is this recent?" "Yeah," I said. "Yesterday." She sat beside me quietly. I could feel the words crawling up my throat, bitter and hot. But I didn't say anything. I just stared at the photos until they blurred. Later that afternoon, I called my mom. My hands were steady, but I could hear the tightness in my own voice. "Hey," I said. "I saw the pictures from Max's party. Just wanted to ask, why wasn't I invited?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my chest squeeze. "Oh, honey," she said, like I was the one being difficult. "It wasn't intentional. We just figured you wouldn't really be into that kind of scene. You're not much of a party person, right? I would have come, I said. I would have shown up. It was a big moment for him. Well, she continued breezily. We also didn't want to put you in an uncomfortable spot. I know things have felt complicated between you two. We thought giving you space might be kinder. Kinder. I stared at the wall in my apartment while my mother's voice filled the silence, all gentle condescension and polite dismissal. After a beat, I said, then you won't have to worry about being uncomfortable at my wedding either. Her voice caught. What? I proposed to Lynette last week. Silence. Congratulations, she said finally. Flat. Awkward. I'll let you go, I said. I have a lot of planning to do. Then I hung up. And that was the first time I ever drew a real line between me and them. A line I wasn't planning to erase. The night I proposed to Lynette, it was raining. Not in some cinematic way, just cold, steady Portland drizzle. We were standing under a rusted awning outside the reclaimed wood studio where she rented space. She was wearing old jeans and a flannel shirt with paint on the sleeves, and I couldn't think of a more perfect moment. I pulled the ring from my jacket pocket, something simple, antique, nothing flashy. She blinked, took a step back, then stepped forward again and whispered, Are you serious? Dead serious, I said. If you say no, I'm going to have to sit through another awkward dinner with my parents alone. She laughed, cupped my face, and said yes so quietly I barely heard it. Afterward, we stood in the rain a little longer. Neither of us mentioned my family. We didn't have to. Planning the wedding felt like breathing for the first time in months. No group texts. No drama. No long conversations about centerpieces with people who didn't care. Just the two of us. We booked a small lodge up in the coastal mountains, an hour from Tillamook, hidden in the trees. Wood-beamed ceilings, big windows, a creek that ran behind the cabins. We kept the guest list short. Her parents, her two sisters, a few close friends from her art community, and one person from mine, Aunt Lorraine. She wasn't really a close aunt growing up. She was Dad's older sister, the one who moved to Bend and only came around for major holidays. But after my call with Mom, something in me cracked open, and I emailed Lorraine that night. Just said I was getting married, that I wasn't inviting the rest of the family, and I hoped she understood. She called me the next morning and said, Honey, if your mama knew how to love both of her boys without comparison, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And that was that. A week later, our invitations went out. Linen paper, pressed with fern leaves Lynette had designed herself. We sent 23. None to my parents. None to Max. 3 weeks later, I got a text from my cousin Harper. Just a photo of the invitation sitting on Aunt Lorraine's kitchen counter. Below it, she had typed, Your mom saw this. She's spiraling. That was the word she used. Spiraling. I stared at the picture for a long time. I could picture it too easily. Mom standing in Lorraine's kitchen, fingers twitching, eyes wide. Probably repeating, he's doing this to punish us, like a mantra. Maybe Dad was there, sipping coffee, silent as ever. Maybe Max was texting someone about how dramatic I'd always been. Lynette sat next to me on the couch and read the text over my shoulder. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I think I'm supposed to feel guilty. But all I feel is calm. I put the phone down and turned to her. Do you think that's weird? No, she said. I think that's peace. And for the first time in my life, I believed her. The night I proposed to Lynette, it was raining. Not in some cinematic way, just cold, steady Portland drizzle. We were standing under a rusted awning outside the reclaimed wood studio where she rented space. She was wearing old jeans and a flannel shirt with paint on the sleeves, and I couldn't think of a more perfect moment. I pulled the ring from my jacket pocket, something simple, antique, nothing flashy. She blinked, took a step back, then stepped forward again and whispered, Are you serious? Dead serious, I said. If you say no, I'm going to have to sit through another awkward dinner with my parents alone. She laughed, cupped my face, and said yes so quietly I barely heard it. Afterward, we stood in the rain a little longer. Neither of us mentioned my family. We didn't have to. Planning the wedding felt like breathing for the first time in months. No group texts. No drama. No long conversations about centerpieces with people who didn't care. Just the two of us. We booked a small lodge up in the coastal mountains, an hour from Tillamook, hidden in the trees. Wood-beamed ceilings, big windows, a creek that ran behind the cabins. We kept the guest list short. Her parents, her two sisters, a few close friends from her art community, and one person from mine, Aunt Lorraine. She wasn't really a close aunt growing up. She was Dad's older sister, the one who moved to Bend and only came around for major holidays. But after my call with Mom, something in me cracked open, and I emailed Lorraine that night. Just said I was getting married, that I wasn't inviting the rest of the family, and I hoped she understood. She called me the next morning and said, Honey, if your mama knew how to love both of her boys without comparison, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And that was that. A week later, our invitations went out, linen paper, pressed with fern leaves Lynette had designed herself. We sent 23. None to my parents. None to Max. 3 weeks later, I got a text from my cousin Harper. Just a photo of the invitation sitting on Aunt Lorraine's kitchen counter. Below it, she had typed, "Your mom saw this. She's spiraling." That was the word she used. Spiraling. I stared at the picture for a long time. I could picture it too easily, Mom standing in Lorraine's kitchen, fingers twitching, eyes wide. Probably repeating, "He's doing this to punish us," like a mantra. Maybe Dad was there, sipping coffee, silent as ever. Maybe Max was texting someone about how dramatic I'd always been. Lynette sat next to me on the couch and read the text over my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I'm supposed to feel guilty. But all I feel is calm." I put the phone down and turned to her. "Do you think that's weird?" "No," she said. "I think that's peace." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Lynette and I were at the vineyard outside McMinnville, doing a tasting with the caterer. We were halfway through a flight of Pinot Noirs and talking hors d'oeuvres when I noticed someone standing at the edge of the patio. My stomach dropped. It was my father. He looked smaller somehow. Same worn leather jacket, same tucked-in flannel, but he wasn't standing like the man I remembered. His shoulders were hunched, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. I looked at Lynette. She raised an eyebrow. "Do you want me to?" "No," I said, already standing. I walked over slowly. The closer I got, the older he looked. His face was more lined, his eyes tired. "Hey, Damien," he said. "Dad." He looked out over the rows of vines instead of at me. "This is a nice place." "Quiet." I waited. He rocked on his heels. "This has gone far enough," he said finally. I crossed my arms. "You came all the way out here to say that?" He exhaled. "Your mother's not sleeping. She's been sick with worry. Max, he's upset. The cousins are talking. I figured maybe I could talk some sense into you before you make a mistake you can't undo." I nodded slowly. "So this is an intervention?" "It's not like that," he said quickly. "I just think, excluding the family? That's not you. You're not this cold." "You think I'm being cold?" I repeated. "But when I got left out of Max's party, that wasn't cold. When I called and Mom told me I didn't fit the scene, that was love." He winced. "Your mom meant well." "No," I said, voice low. "She meant what she said. I wasn't invited because I don't play the part she wants me to. And you didn't stop her. You never do." He looked at me then. Really looked. "You think I don't notice," I went on. "But I do. Every time you kept quiet. Every time you let Max dominate the conversation. Every time you looked away while I got pushed to the edge of the room." "That's not true," he said, but weakly. "It is," I said. And it hurt. For years, I swallowed it. Told myself I was being dramatic. But I'm done doing that. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself. Finally, he was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Can we be there?" I looked at him. His eyes weren't angry. Just tired. Maybe sorry. Maybe not. I thought about the ceremony. About the vows Lynette and I wrote together. About the peace I'd finally found in being seen by someone without conditions. I thought about that spotlight that never once turned toward me until I walked out from under it. "Not this time," I said. He nodded, slowly. "Maybe someday?" "Maybe," I said. "But not this time." He looked down, then back at me. "You've changed." "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending I didn't notice." He gave a small nod, then turned and walked away. I stood there until his car disappeared down the gravel road. And for the first time, I didn't wish he'd turn around. It was early. One of those rare quiet mornings where the world hadn't fully woken up. Lynette had gone to the studio, and I was alone in the apartment, sipping coffee and flipping through sample photos from the florist. Then there was a knock. Not the kind of frantic banging I expected from my mother, or the impatient thud that would belong to Max. Just a polite, almost hesitant knock. I opened the door and froze. It was Isabel, Max's fiancée. I barely knew her. We'd met twice. Once at a family barbecue, where she stuck close to Max and smiled at everything. The second time at that New Year's Eve dinner, when she complimented my blazer and then disappeared into Max's crowd. I never had a problem with her, but I'd never expected to see her alone, and certainly not here. She was standing there in jeans and a windbreaker, no makeup, her hair in a messy bun. She looked nothing like the polished version I'd seen on Max's Instagram. "Hi," she said. I blinked. Hey." She looked nervous. "Can I come in for a second?" I stepped aside, still unsure what this was. She stood in the living room for a moment, looking around like she was trying to figure out what to say. "I didn't know," she said finally. "About the party. That you weren't invited." I said nothing. "And the wedding," she added. "The fact that you're not inviting your family. I didn't know that either. I only found out when Max started complaining about how dramatic you were being." I gave a small laugh. "That sounds about right." She looked down. I know I'm not part of this yet. Not officially. But I'm trying to understand what I've gotten into. And honestly, I'm struggling. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She hesitated. I used to think Max just had a complicated family. That maybe you were the distant one, or just didn't get along with people. That's what he always said. I nodded. That tracks. But then I saw how your mom talked about you. How they talk around you. Like you're this, afterthought. Like your feelings are something to tiptoe around or ignore altogether. And I realized I've never once heard any of them say anything kind about you unless it made them look good. That hit harder than I expected. She looked up at me. I steady. I know this probably isn't my place, but I see what's happening. And it's not fair. It's not just family drama. It's something deeper. I let out a long breath. I appreciate you saying that, I said quietly. She nodded. I was wondering, could I come to the wedding? I blinked. You and Max. She shook her head. Just me. Not for him. Not for them. For myself. Because I want to be around people who care enough to do things differently. I stared at her for a moment, then nodded once. Yeah, I said. You can come. 2 days after Isabel's visit, my phone buzzed while I was at work. A Facebook notification. I don't spend much time on there, just enough to RSVP to things or peek at baby photos from old high school friends. But this notification was different. Carolyn Whitaker updated her status. That's my mother. I clicked it, not out of curiosity, but out of a sinking, familiar instinct. The kind I'd felt since I was a kid. The kind that told me, you're about to be thrown under the bus again. The post was long. Public. It's hard being a mother. It's harder when one of your children chooses to erase the entire family from the happiest day of their life. I don't understand how we got here. I've always loved both my sons equally, even if they're very different. I just wish people understood how painful it is to be left behind without reason. No one's perfect, but we did our best. If you're a parent, you'll understand what I mean. Beneath it were dozens of comments. Some from extended relatives. Some from family friends. Oh, Carolyn, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve that. Some kids are just ungrateful. You gave him everything. Sending hugs. Family always comes back around. And then a few that made my stomach turn. Which one was it? Max. The older one, right? The quiet one. What kind of son doesn't invite his own mother to his wedding? I didn't comment. I didn't respond. But I screenshotted it. Every line. Every comment. That night, Isabel came over with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. We were sitting on the floor going over music options when I handed her my phone. She read the post slowly. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. She said she wouldn't pull this, she muttered. She told me she'd let me try first. I raised an eyebrow. She said that to you? Yeah, Isabel said. The day I visited. I called her afterward. Told her I wanted to be there. And she said, if that's how you feel, then you talk to him. I won't get in the way. I exhaled sharply and stood up. Walked to the kitchen. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. From clarity. This is exactly what she does, I said. She wants to control the story. Always has. If I speak up, I'm dramatic. If I stay quiet, I'm cold. Either way, she stays the victim. I opened my laptop. Pulled up the guest list spreadsheet. I deleted 4 names. My parents. Max. And one aunt who commented, don't expect us to forgive this. Then I added 3. Lorraine. Isabel. And my cousin Andrew, who had messaged me that morning to say, just so you know, I see it too. You're not wrong. They want to write the script, I said. But we're done with that. Isabel nodded. So what are you writing instead? I smiled. Our own ending. The sky was soft and wide that day, cloud-filtered sunlight pouring over the ridge like it had been saving up all year just for us. The ceremony was small. No more than 30 people, spread across wooden chairs on the grass behind the lodge. The mountains loomed in the background, quiet and ancient. A creek ran behind the property, babbling like it had secrets to keep. Everything felt still. Real. Lynette wore a simple ivory dress she'd made herself, raw silk that swayed with the breeze. I wore a charcoal suit with a tie she had stitched with ferns, a little inside joke from our first date hike. There was no aisle music, just birdsong, wind, and the sound of someone's shoes crunching gravel. Aunt Lorraine was the first person I saw when I walked out. She was already crying, a folded tissue clenched in her fist like it had been holding back 20 years. I squeezed her shoulder as I passed. She pulled me into a quick hug, whispering, "You did good, kiddo." Isabel sat in the 3rd row. She wore a navy dress and no makeup. Her hands were folded politely, and when she caught my eye, she gave me a small, proud nod. Lynette's family filled out most of the rest of the seats. Her dad stood near the front, chin high, eyes glassy. Her sisters passed around mints and jokes before the ceremony started, loud enough to make us all laugh. We said our vows under a lattice arch that Lynette's cousin had built from driftwood. No one was filming. No one was live streaming. It wasn't that kind of day. I looked into Lynette's eyes, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I wasn't performing. I wasn't proving anything. I was just there. Present. We kissed, and the world didn't stop, but it did slow down. At the reception, we had long tables covered in wildflowers. Mismatched chairs. Fairy lights strung through the trees. A friend from Lynette's ceramics co-op played guitar in the corner. There was no DJ, no playlist. Just people, wine, and the kind of warmth that doesn't come from fancy speeches or carefully planned toasts. It felt honest. Midway through dinner, one of the waiters tapped my shoulder. "There's something for you," he said, handing me an envelope. No return address. Dropped off by courier. I took it to the edge of the patio and opened it. Inside was a letter, written in familiar cursive. "Damien, this isn't an apology. I'm not ready for that. But I need you to know I've been thinking about everything. About how we raised you to be quiet and steady, and then blamed you for disappearing when we didn't see you standing in the background. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. But I hope someday you'll understand that this wasn't always about choosing Max. Sometimes I think we just didn't know how to see you. And now that we finally do, you're walking away. Maybe we deserve that. Maybe not. But either way, I'm sorry you had to carry it alone. Love. Mom." I read it twice, then folded it and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't tell Lynette about it right away. I didn't need to. She already saw something shift in my eyes. We danced under the string lights that night, barefoot in the grass. No photographers. No filters. Just us. And for the first time, I wasn't standing in Max's shadow. I was standing in the light. It was a few weeks after we got back from our honeymoon, an off-grid cabin outside Leavenworth, no Wi-Fi, no reception, just us and a wood stove that creaked like it had a sense of humor. We'd been sorting through wedding photos that morning, scattered across the dining table in little glossy piles. Lynette had a marker in her mouth, scribbling notes on the backs. Lorraine wiping tears here, Isabel laughing at the breadstick tower, you crying but pretending not to. The doorbell rang just after noon. We weren't expecting anyone. Lynette looked at me. "Delivery." I stood slowly. "Maybe." I opened the door, and there she was. My mother. No makeup. No scarf. Just a gray sweater pulled tight and her hair in a frizzed bun. She looked older. Smaller. Like something had folded her in half since I last saw her. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at me like she didn't know how to start. "Hi," she said finally. I nodded. "Hi." She held something in her hands, a small, square tin box with faded floral print and rusted edges. She turned it once in her palms, then held it out to me. "I was cleaning the attic," she said. "Found this. Thought, maybe you should have it." I didn't move right away. "What is it?" I asked. She looked down. "Your stuff. From when you were little." I reached out and took it. It was heavier than I expected. I opened it slowly, right there on the threshold. Inside was a stack of old report cards, some yellowing at the corners. A blue ribbon from a fourth-grade science fair. A clay dinosaur I'd made in art class, one arm broken clean off, but the googly eyes still hanging on. And beneath it all, a wrinkled index card with my name written in my own childhood handwriting. Damien's box. "Do not touch." I stared at it. "I thought you threw this away," I said, quietly. "I didn't," she replied. "I couldn't." There was no apology. No speech. Just that. Her eyes didn't leave the box. She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. I stepped back slightly, not fully inviting her in. But I didn't close the door either. She looked at me, really looked. "Okay," she said. And then she turned and walked back down the steps. I stood in the doorway for a long time, the tin box clutched to my chest like it was breakable. Lynette came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, resting her chin on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "But I think this is what her version of trying looks like." She kissed the back of my neck. "Doesn't mean you owe her anything." "I know." We went back inside. I set the box on the table, next to the wedding photos. And for a moment, past and present sat side by side, quiet, imperfect, and finally mine to decide what to do with.